Sports Radio.
Here comes the siren. I want to go higher. Oh, my goodness. Batista with a drive. Deep left field. No doubt about it. Posey will defend. Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
Oh, baby, for sure.
Cabin Sports Radio starts now.
Cabin Sports Radio back on the Cabin Radio airwaves for another week. Joined in studio as always by Unbreakable Mike Gibbons. How you doing, mister?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Big show coming up this Monday. Lots of hockey news, NHL news, news from the IIHF front. We'll talk about all of that. Plus, special guests Kerry Galusha and Kendra Wambold join us to make a very special announcement on behalf of Sport North and KidSport NWT. That and more coming up on Cabin Sports Radio.
You're listening to Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward.
Yes, Cabin Sports Radio brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. Glad you could join us for another Monday night edition of Cabin Sports Radio. Unbreakable Mike Gibbons sitting directly opposite me. How you doing this evening, sir?
Good. Very good, very good. Yourself?
Not too bad. How did things fare last week with Mr. Jesse Wheeler?
First time I saw the wheel in a while. It was good.
Yeah?
It took me back. It's been a couple years since we were on the airwaves together, so it took us a little time to get the chemistry right, but no, it was always fun hosting a show with the wheel.
I heard he had issues with the intro.
Yeah. The length of it, he found it a little long. I was like, that's a beautiful intro.
Might be intimidating.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think that's what it was.
First time rookie host. Yeah. It's tough. It's a great. And Ollie actually just burst in the door just after we did it, saying how much he loves that intro.
It's a great intro.
It's not bad.
To be fair, I think we spent the first, I want to say 5 minutes of the show talking about it, actually, because we were reminiscing about the Jose Bautista home run, which
Yes.
made its way into that package.
Yes.
So we got started off on the wrong foot. We were distracted for a couple minutes.
It is a very potentially distracting intro,
Indeed.
that is to be sure. But yes, Cabin Sports Radio, we have to, of course, right off the top here, talk about something that happened over the weekend that has been talked about for way too long
Ad
now.
nauseum. Yeah.
Since the start of the NHL season, there is a name we have heard consistently, and it's been a player that hasn't even been on the ice yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say his name because you know who it is if you're a sports fan, and particularly a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you're probably sick of hearing his name, especially for the fact that, once again, he has not even touched the ice yet, has not put a point on the board, but he will be joining the team very shortly. Not sure if he's going to be in the lineup for their next game, but shortly after that, I'm sure. Number 29. You can go ahead and say his name if you want, Mike. I'm going to stay off.
Well, they've got a pretty fun schedule, actually, over the next week. I believe they're in Buffalo tomorrow. They've got a rematch with the Bruins on Saturday. You figure he'll be back in the lineup for Saturday. But yes, number 29, inking a 6-year, $41.77 million contract. And we heard this story started developing before the start of the season when we found out that he was missing training camp. I really did not expect, I don't think anyone did. There hasn't been a contract dispute that's truly gone the distance. I don't think before. Johnny Gaudreau, I believe, missed part of training camp for his.
He was the last one I could think of. Yeah,
but that was resolved fairly quickly. To go literally all the way to the 11th hour, I think the fax, I don't know who faxes anymore, but it made its way to the NHL headquarters. It was 5 minutes to the deadline, which was 5 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday. I think it arrived at 4:55. Apparently, number 29 reaching out to the organization himself about 40 minutes prior to the deadline. So this all happened truly at the 11th hour. And all the figures that were thrown around beforehand, it finally came to light. We know exactly what the figure is. So front heavy. Actually, he's one of few players. It's around 8 that are making more than $10 million this season. Their cap hit is more than 10, and good that they sort of front loaded it.
Yeah, it's going to help the Maple Leafs
it will.
down the line for sure,
significantly. And then after this year, I think the AAV is $6.96 million over the remaining 5 years of the deal, I guess, until 2023. Yeah.
So the rumors at the start of the negotiation phase from up until now was that he was originally looking for something north of $8 million a season, which was obviously ridiculous. The Leafs decided at that point they had to dig in their heels and start what was probably going to be a long negotiation. I think Kyle Dubas and the Leafs management team was prepared for that, but I can't imagine that anyone expected it to go, like you said, right down to the 11th hour and the 55th minute before finally getting a deal complete. There were rumors of possibly trading the Swedish prince. There were rumors of, maybe letting him sit because the Leafs don't really need him or haven't really needed him to this
quite well
point.
without him,
So there was a lot of options on the table, but for sure, Kyle Dubas, being the first-year general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, very young guy. This is the first real test as a GM he had to face. You could argue that signing Jonathan Tavares in the offseason was the first test, but we know that Tavares wanted to be there. He took a bit of a hometown discount, could have asked more elsewhere. That was probably the easiest negotiation you were ever going to encounter for a bona fide franchise player like Jonathan Tavares.
Show up with a slideshow of him in Toronto Maple Leafs PJs. Come home, buddy.
That's right.
It. Done.
How do you say no to that?
Yeah.
Apparently they didn't have a similar slideshow for William Nylander, or it just didn't work.
It didn't work.
Oh, I just said his name. Oh,
dang it. The Swedish prince.
Shoot.
Number 29.
All right. Well,
22-year-old winger on the Leafs. We'll leave it at that.
Without question, he is going to make the Leafs better.
Yes.
They have, like we said, up until this point, not needed him. They went through a stretch after like the first 10 games of the season where they were having a little bit of trouble scoring, and suddenly William Nylander's stock, I'm just going to keep saying it now. I already said it once. So,
Cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, spilled the beans already. Where his stock suddenly shot up because I think they went like 3 or 4 games without scoring more than 3 goals. And said the negotiation phase suddenly shifted into his favor. But since then, I mean, they've been pretty steady. And even on the back end, the defense has looked a lot better since the first 10 games of the season. Obviously, Frederick Anderson in goal has been rock solid. And the Leafs as a whole have looked like a team that really doesn't need to make too many additions. But down the stretch, injuries, of course, occur. And anytime you can improve your depth, especially with a guy who already has been part of the system for the last few years, you know exactly what you're going to get from him.
Very good chemistry with Matthews.
Yes, exactly. Great chemistry with Austin Matthews, as he's proven. Definite potential to be a 30-goal guy, 30 to 40-goal guy, if he's getting the top 6 minutes, which you have to imagine he will. They had to get this deal done. They could have let him sit, but it just, I heard, there was a really good point made on Hockey Night in Canada that's like, Elliot Friedman said, they are potential Stanley Cup contenders this year. I know anyone who's not a Leaf fan is just scoffing right now that I just said that, but the Toronto Maple Leafs themselves have to believe that they are in a position to make a very serious run at the Stanley Cup this year. You can't justify being in that position and leaving a guy who is going to make your roster better on the sidelines.
I think someone who grew up in the suburbs of Toronto and other Leaf fans would say, for the next 6 months, I'm over the moon happy.
Yes.
I think I'll start to breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief come after the upcoming negotiations, which we know are coming. It's this dark cloud that's hanging over Toronto. It shouldn't right now because times are very good.
Right.
They're literally second in the NHL standings right now. They just got a 20-goal scorer. Only has 2 NHL seasons under his belt, but has surpassed 60 points in each of those seasons. Has good chemistry with Austin Matthews. I think where he'll help them is in their transition game. Strong on the puck. You figure he'll get a good chunk of the power play minutes now, which will come at the expense of someone like Mitch Marner, who's had a fantastic season.
Right.
But it's just another weapon for you. It's tough to think what their power play units could look like, what they could potentially roll out now, because they're pretty good.
Right.
I think the figure, I like that it was front loaded, and they do somehow still have, I think it's around $5.5 million in cap space for this current season,
right?
Which puts you in a position to potentially look at a rental or something for their upcoming Stanley Cup playoff run. And then if you do get to a point where you feel you have to move him, suddenly that contract's not quite as terrible with you're getting that extra $4 million or so off the table now by front loading it and paying that out in the first year of the contract.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I think, what he brings right now, obviously this team gets better.
Yes.
They can roll out. You can't even really call it line 1 and 2. It's really 1A and 1B.
You can barely call it line 3
at
this point.
So he will absolutely help them in the interim. I think that the looming question now is, all right, he sort of set the standard for what negotiations could look like. And of the three between Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander, you figured this might have been one of the easier ones. The other guys are certainly going to command more money.
Yes.
We don't know what. The other thing, too, with him sitting out, it has, I think, driven up Mitch Marner's stock significantly. He's second in the league right now in assists.
Yeah.
Tied for third in points scored. At times has looked amazing. Playing really well beside John Tavares. His stock has certainly gone up because of this whole incident.
Yep.
So I think the next 6 months should be very good. And there's also other UFA, RFAs coming up as part of that class too. Does this mean Jake Gardner is all but gone? Kasperi Kapanen, who in Nylander's absence has played pretty well.
Yeah.
Other significant role players too. Johnson, Ennis, Levo, who they actually traded today. But these guys are going to be in a position too where they're going to go to the negotiating table. So you question what sort of precedents it might set, but no question for the next 6 months, this team gets a lot better.
One interesting thing that I never really considered about this until now, basically because it coincided with an imminent announcement that the NHL is set to make tomorrow, which is that Seattle has been granted their application approval for an expansion club in likely October 2020 would be the first year. The Seattle ownership group, which includes Jerry Bruckheimer, randomly enough.
Hollywood heavyweight.
Pushing for a October 2020 arrival. This has been an ongoing application process since sometime last year.
Yeah. It's the NHL's worst kept secret.
Yes.
That this would be the city tab to be the next expansion team.
So Gary Bettman and the NHL is, absolutely expected to make the announcement tomorrow at the Board of Governors meeting that Seattle's club application has been approved. And I never, so what I was going to say is I never really thought about the potential impact of another expansion draft. If you recall the Vegas Golden Knights expansion draft in 2016, teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Winnipeg Jets were in a very good situation because a lot of their stars and like the guys who they knew would be moving them forward in the next few years were under their first their 3-year entry contracts. And, of course, they couldn't be plucked from rosters in the expansion draft. Now they find themselves in a potentially more difficult situation because it's a few more years removed.
Yeah.
Pretty much all those star players are off their entry-level contracts now, and you got to make some really tough decisions as to which guys you want to protect, or do you want to make some trades and get ahead of it because you know that this is coming now. It's a really interesting situation for these young teams.
And it's not too often right out of an ELC that you'll see someone sign a deal as significant as William Nylander's 6-year, almost $42 million. There are some other parallels, but these are guys that have earned it, the Nate McKinnons, the David Pasternaks.
Right.
Scheifele. You don't see, and all of them are in the same dollar range and year range as Nylander. So he's got his worth. I mean, that's a pretty good return for someone like him when these other guys are literally leading the league in scoring and have pretty similar contracts. So it's not too often that you see these long-term deals right out of an ELC. You'll usually see a bridge deal. But yeah, we will see more of these guys susceptible when it comes time for the expansion track. You can only lock up so many people. And then we saw like the Pittsburgh Penguins would know fairly well. They lost Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yep.
Some key guy was James Neal.
James Neal, he was from Nashville.
Yeah. So yeah. But teams like you can't lock up everyone.
No. Some other interesting tidbits, and we're gonna head into a break just in a minute here, and probably come back to the Seattle thing because we got to throw some names around.
Yeah.
New team. Mm-hmm. How can we not speculate on what the name's going to be? But construction on the $600 million overhaul of Key Arena, the former home of the Seattle Supersonics, is set to begin next week. The only thing that not the only thing, but one thing that may potentially delay the start of the Seattle franchise in October 2020 is that there's an impending CBA work stoppage because the NHL is the only professional league that can't figure these things out years in advance. And we actually predict work stoppages in the NHL. So if that happens as of 2020, the inaugural season would be pushed back to 2021. And I didn't know this, little known fact, the NHL actually granted Seattle an expansion franchise back in 1974. But the ownership group at the time failed to secure funds to pay the expansion fee by 1976. And now 42 years later, they've got another chance. Not expected to be an issue this time. I don't know what expansion fees were in 1974. Now they sit at $650 million.
They got Jerry Bruckheimer. They'll be okay.
They'll be okay. Team expected to be named in spring 2019, but we're going to speculate long before that. That is coming up as well as Kendra Wambold and Kerry Galusha joining us in studio to make a very special announcement on behalf of KidSport NWT. That happening next on Cabin Sports Radio. Don't go away.
The Cabin Sports Radio Podcast, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward.
Welcome back to Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. Joined in studio now by Sport North Communications Director and KidSport Coordinator of the NWT, Kendra Wambold, and a special guest in studio. Kendra, why don't you introduce our special guest and why they are here today?
So yes, we have Kerry Galusha here with us today. Kerry, we made an announcement this morning that she is the first KidSport NWT ambassador. So what that kind of means is Kerry will help just kind of create awareness about what KidSport does. She's a little bit of a face of KidSport NWT as the ambassador. So she'll help us just promote things that are happening, such as our golf tournament event, different campaigns that are happening throughout the year. And so we're very, very excited to have Kerry on board with us. We were kind of thinking about who should be the first KidSport NWT ambassador, and Kerry is just a great person. She's definitely kind of grassroots, which is synonymous with what KidSport does. She's obviously involved in the community in the North, especially Illinois for where she's living. KidSport is so much more than just kind of trophies and medals. Sports definitely help shape the lives of our youth, and by promoting the benefits of teamwork, fair play with and hard work and perseverance, and definitely those are characteristics that Kerry has on the ice and off the ice.
So, Kerry, welcome to Cabin Sports Radio.
Thanks for having me.
And,
this is super exciting.
And congratulations on being named the first NWT KidSport ambassador.
I know, this is great. When I got a letter asking me to be the first NWT ambassador, I was like, wow, because we have some Olympians in the North, and I was picked over them, so this is really cool.
What does it mean to you to be announced as the first NWT KidSport ambassador?
I'm very honored, first of all. I know I have quite the resume in the curling world, but in the North, being from the North is super special, and then to be asked to be the first NWT ambassador for KidSport, to me, it's really special. And my teammates, my family, they're the only ones that I've really told about this so far. So, and they're really excited and pumped, and to be the face of KidSport right now would be really great. In the curling world, I know I have a 9-year-old daughter as well. She's in other sports other than curling, so I know sports sports in general for kids are really important. So I'm really excited to be involved in this.
You join a pretty impressive host of KidSport ambassadors. Of course, KidSport is a national program, and in all different provinces, there are different KidSport ambassadors. Fellow curler Brett Gallant in Prince Edward Island, Mark Scheifele of the Winnipeg Jets, and Johnny Gaudreau a little closer to home here in Calgary. Of course, he's got the Gaudreau's Goals for Kids, making a $1,000 donation to KidSport for every goal. So really cool programs with some pretty big names. It's got to be a pretty big honor to be in that crowd now.
Oh, definitely. Kendra told me a few of those names, and I was like, oh, wow, that's really neat that I was chosen for the NWT. So it is. It's a big deal. And the program itself, I don't think it's well known. So I think this is a really good opportunity for the program, and for myself, I can help promote it. And so I'm really looking forward to it.
And Kendra, I'll get you to speak to this a little bit. KidSport, obviously, as Kerry mentioned, it's been around for a bit, but obviously the more promotion it can get, the better off for the program in general.
Yeah, so KidSport Canada actually is turning 25 this year, and the NWT is not far behind at 17 years. But just general awareness about what the program is, that people can apply, and that it's grants, not kind of a loan type system.
Right.
So you can apply for up to $300 a year for sport registration or equipment, and that money is that goes to those things. You don't have to pay it back. So, just creating awareness about the program, making sure that people who are eligible to apply are actually know that they can apply for it.
Another really cool thing about the KidSport program, the Community Equipment Grant Program, which has done incredible job bringing money to communities and community centers that could use a bit of help.
Yeah, this fall actually was the biggest sum of money we've given out through the Community Equipment Grant Program at $33,500, and that went to communities like Tuktoyaktuk, Uluhaktuk, Norman Wells, Fort Smith, some places here in Yellowknife, Hay River, so all over the territory. I think this year, with both the spring and the fall, we have reached 16 communities through the Community Equipment Program. So that's communities with their local sports club, their schools, their sport organizations. They can apply for a grant between $500 and $2,000 for things like sports equipment, and if they need to install nets or something like that, they can do that with that.
Amazing. Kerry, you've obviously been involved in curling for a long time. What other sports have you been involved in other sports, or is curling pretty much the rock?
So I used to play soccer in high school. Does that count?
I think that counts. Yeah.
Yeah. I started curling when I was in grade 6. So and right away I started traveling with curling. So I caught the bug early, and I loved it. And I was going to Quebec and Ontario for all these tournaments and meeting new people. And so curling just took all of my time. And plus, I had to stop. I used to go skiing with friends and stuff and tobogganing, and I had to stop doing that because I didn't want to get hurt for curling.
Right.
So,
yes.
so that took precedent over anything. So, yeah.
So it's opened a lot of doors for you as an athlete. Obviously, you've given back here in the North. You've been doing coaching for years. Just wanted to ask you. Obviously, from your perspective, you've seen it as a youth growing up, and you've experienced coaching other youth. Speak to basically the difference that sport can make in a young one's life. You've obviously experienced it yourself. I'm sure you've played with and against many colleagues who have experienced it themselves. And KidSport, obviously, that's kind of what it's geared towards, is making sure more kids have that opportunity where their family, their social situation at home may not really allow for it, because we all know sports costs money. Mm-hmm. But it does make a positive difference in a child's life.
Yeah, I think so. My daughter, I made sure she's tried about 10 different sports, and she's picked what she likes to do. She likes girls basketball and curling and swimming. But she also tried skating. She also did dance. So she's done numerous things. But I think I mean, not only for my own child, just sports in general for children is super important. It promotes teamwork, healthy living. There's so many things, self-confidence. And I think that is true. Like KidSport will help. There are so many children that actually can't play organized sports because they can't afford it. And this program will help them get into a sport that they love to do. So I think it's super important. And I coach junior curling on Monday nights, and it's so fun. And actually, we used the KidSport program last year in junior curling. We applied for a grant, and we were able to get new equipment for all the kids, new brooms, new sliders. The kids loved it, and it actually got them excited to have this new equipment. So, I mean, I've seen firsthand what KidSport can do for kids and curling in general. I mean, it sounds like they've given a lot of money to different sports organizations, but I think it's a really good program that I think we just need to promote it a little bit more and get it out there.
Absolutely. And important to note, and you mentioned that some of your kids have used it for curling. It doesn't have to be an expensive sport, a traditionally expensive sport like hockey. That money is available to whoever applies, whatever you happen to want to use it for. If you can use a bit of help getting into sport, KidSport is there for you. With that in mind, turn our attention to the KidSport Canada National Initiative, the annual national initiative, the Give the Gift of Sport 2018. Fundraising goal this year of $150,000 to coincide with Canada 150. KidSport.ca/gift of sport if you're interested in donating, and the campaign this year running until January 8th, 2019. Definitely worth your while. If you're looking for a charity to donate to, Give the Gift of Sport is a very deserving one. Kendra, I'll get you to speak to your experiences with that.
Yeah, so Give the Gift of Sport, it's an annual kind of end-of-the-year push to raise as much dollars as possible. Through however you donate to KidSport, through KidSport NWT, or through KidSport Canada, you can direct the money that you donate to where you want it to go. So you can choose to direct it to the NWT, and all monies raised in the North stay in the North. We don't have to kind of collectively pool our money as a national program and then divide it up percentage-wise. So if you donate to KidSport NWT, we get it, and every dollar raised for KidSport NWT goes towards this program. So there's not things like office costs, paying phone and internet bills and things like that. It goes directly towards the kids. So yeah, this year the goal is $150,000, and we're very excited. We kind of got things off the ground here for it, with the launch being just a couple days ago. And we're really excited, and hopefully we just absolutely kill the goal of $150,000.
So once again, if you would like to help contribute to that, kidsport.ca/gift of sport. Kendra, thank you so much for coming in. Kerry, thank you for coming in, and congratulations on being the first KidSport NWT ambassador.
Thank you.
The CSR Podcast.
Back on Cabin Sports Radio. It's a hockey-heavy show today, so hopefully you tuned in wanting to listen to some hockey, because that's pretty much all you're getting today.
Talk some puck.
Moving into the IIHF, Hockey Canada announced the 34-player selection camp roster for the 2019 World Junior Hockey Championships this year in Victoria and Vancouver. We will be defending our gold medal championship last year on home ice. Always an exciting prospect. Of course, now we're into December 3rd. It is the Christmas season, and from a hockey fan's perspective in Canada, this is always a really fun time to look forward to in the hockey season. World Junior Hockey Championship, there is no more fun hockey to watch than World Junior Hockey.
It's fantastic. I'm a big basketball fan, too, so Christmas Day is always loaded with the best games you could ask for, the best matchups. But it really is the World Hockey, the Junior Championships that take over for me. You always get a good matchup, usually kicking off around Boxing Day. And then we'd always have the matchup with the Americans on New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve, yes.
And by the first, only 1 week into the new year, we're already talking the gold medal game. So always a fantastic tournament. These these kids are leaving it all on the line. They're playing for everything, wearing their country on their sleeve. And like you said, coming off a gold medal win against Sweden last year in Buffalo, our first gold medal since 2015, I believe. You know the States are always going to be in the hunt.
Yes.
Sweden's always going to be in the hunt. Russia, really good games against Finland in years past. It really is a tournament that can be won by anyone. These nations put their best teams forward. Only 2 returning players, though, this year for the Canadian squad, if they are successful and make the team.
Funny how despite all of that, like you mentioned, Sweden, the States, Finland, Russia, all contenders, all could take a World Junior Championship gold medal any given year. But the pressure is always on Canada.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the same, if the stakes are as high, if the pressure is quite as high in other countries as it is in Canada. But here, we always expect to win gold. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it's always been, and that's the way it will continue to be, regardless of how good a team we expect to actually have going into this year. Having said that, Alexis Lafreniere of the Rimouski Oceanic would be the first 17-year-old on Team Canada since Connor McDavid, if he is selected this year, which he is expected to be. He is on this 34-player selection camp roster, and he is expected to be the first overall pick in the 2020 NHL entry draft. So very exciting player to look forward to seeing at this year's tournaments.
And I certainly do remember, actually, it was in 2015 when Canada beat Russia in another really exciting final. That was a team led by McDavid, and I do recall that tournament. An exciting player, still is an extremely exciting player.
Old news.
So, yeah. So just a little bit of pressure on this kid's shoulder if he is successful and gets his chance at the roster, being the first 17-year-old since. No easy feat.
No, for sure. Other Canadian franchises that are fans of other Canadian teams that have a few prospects in the pool that they can look forward to possibly seeing at this year's World Junior Championship. Montreal fans have defenseman Josh Brook and forward Nick Suzuki, who, of course, the Canadiens picked up in a trade this past offseason for Max Pacioretty. Suzuki came back the other way to Montreal. Ottawa has they lead the way for Canadian prospects with defenseman Jacob Bernard-Docker, forward Shane Bowers, and forward Alex Fermenton. Toronto has one goaltender, Ian Scott, who is a hopeful to be in this year's tournament. Edmonton has one player, defenseman Evan Bouchard, and Vancouver goalie Michael DiPietro. Calgary and Winnipeg, no prospects on this year's Team Canada. None even in the 34-man selection camp roster. A little bit surprising to see. I know Winnipeg they seem to really like American players. They've drafted a lot of really talented, albeit American players, but Calgary, not sure what's going on there. It's always a bit strange when you see a Canadian NHL team with no potential prospects in the World Junior Championship.
So 29 of the 34 named currently playing in the Canadian Hockey League, either coming from the OHL, QM, JHL, or Western Hockey League. The other 5 all playing at American institutions, whether it be Denver, North Dakota, Boston University. So it should be pretty interesting. Most of them coming from the Canadian Hockey League. But yeah, interesting that Calgary doesn't make the list.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, like we say, very much looking forward to it. Always on Boxing Day is a very exciting time for a hockey fan in Canada. Christmas doesn't end after Christmas Day. We got a whole nice long tournament to watch after that. So very much looking forward to that this year. We will be back. Let's do some Seattle expansion team names. All right?
Yeah.
After the break.
Very good.
Let's try and name the new NHL expansion team.
You're listening to Cabin Sports Radio. Miss part of the show? Download the podcast at cabinradio.ca or on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spotify.
Cabin Sports Radio brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. You may have heard earlier in the show, we mentioned that tomorrow the NHL and Gary Bettman expected to announce that the Seattle Expansion Club application has been officially approved by the NHL Board of Governors. It's all but a sure thing that is happening tomorrow at the Board of Governors meeting, which means that as of October 2020, we may have a 32nd NHL franchise and finally evening the conferences.
Yes.
16 apiece.
So it would presumably mean that one team will have to shuffle from the Pacific to the Central.
Yes.
The lone division with 7 teams now, if I'm not mistaken.
And apparently that's likely to be the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah. Which is kind of unfortunate. I'm a big fan of division rivalries, and I think they were really hoping with Vegas entering the league in 2016 that Vegas and Arizona would form a nice little rivalry.
Right.
So it'd be a little disappointing in a way if they were to go over to the much more competitive Central Division.
Yes.
But it has to happen. 16 teams in the Eastern Conference right now, only 15 in the West. So for the sake of parity, we got to have 16 in each. And it would obviously make sense if Seattle were to get a franchise. They would have to be in the Pacific.
Yes.
So it looks like Arizona would be the odd team out, and they would have to shuffle over to the Central Division.
On the bright side, as far as division rivalries goes, Arizona's got a natural one in Winnipeg.
Yeah,
being the OG.
That's right.
Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah,
it's always interesting when the Jets play the Coyotes. There's always a sense of like, I don't know. There's just a hatred between the teams, even though there's no actual connection between any of the players. It's just we were you before you.
That's right.
Came back and were you again. It always kind of screws with the mind of a Winnipeg Jets
reignite
fan.
That divisional hatred.
Yes,
just bring it back.
So there's a natural division rivalry there that could potentially happen. Also, the skeptic or the pessimist NHL fan might think that makes it nice and convenient for them to move Arizona to Houston potentially, which is always on the table. When it comes to Arizona, they may just collapse and move at any given point.
I wonder if the feel this time around, especially after seeing how successful Vegas was in their inaugural season, and it was a season to remember.
Yes.
Maybe a little more optimism. It was weird talking expansion, and the NHL seems to be the only league right now that is pretty aggressively pursuing expansion opportunities. And every time that the rumor mill pops up again, you hear of these different cities that would consider a bid. There's always been the second Toronto market, the Nordiques.
Yep.
There are other big American cities. Seattle's probably one of the few large American cities without either an NBA or an NHL team. They did, of course, have the Supersonics until 2008, and sadly, for that city, lost them to OKC.
Right.
But 32,000 season ticket deposits already. There's an appetite for hockey in Seattle, which is extremely exciting.
Yeah.
And fresh off of another expansion team 2 years ago with the Knights, and what a remarkable season they had. It seems like there's an appetite for more.
Yeah. Well, like you say, the only major sporting outlet that seems to be entertaining the idea of expanding, but it's interesting because it seemed like a couple years ago, Gary Bettman and the NHL Board of Governors it seemed like they didn't really have any interest in expanding. It was if a club becomes available, then we'll talk. And of course, obviously, in 2012, the Atlanta Thrashers became available, ended up moving to Winnipeg, and since then, like we said, a lot of conversation, just continuous, always reoccurring conversation surrounding the Arizona Coyotes and the ownership group there.
Yeah.
And many potential willing partners to buy that franchise. But it seemed like until a couple years ago, that was the only real option. And then all of a sudden, I guess Seattle had $650 million
flying around,
hanging around. And they're like, well, are we going to say no to that kind of money?
It seems like the biggest hurdle at this point is the building itself, Key Arena. The owner... It sounds like the ownership, they're obviously very excited, and why wouldn't you be? But one potential hurdle is this massive $700 million renovation or something to the building itself, which once housed the Supersonics. I think they need to get that done first. And I know they want to jump the gun, and they've thrown around this idea of potentially starting in a temporary location, and then when all things are said and done, moving the club to the brand new, newly renovated Key Arena.
Right.
When the NHL is saying, even if we have to bump it back 1 year, that's not the end of the world. Let's just get them playing there right away as opposed to housing them in a temporary location. But it's very exciting. It sounds like by 2021 at the very latest, we could welcome the 32nd team and do another expansion draft, which is always fun.
There's a thought, too, that they also might start the first month, like October of 2020, on the road while their arena is finishing completion. Mm-hmm. And it's almost kind of an idealistic situation because this is that plan is assuming that everything goes according to plan timeline-wise, which construction on arenas rarely seems to, happen and finish exactly on schedule. Without knowing exactly what, the contractors involved there are doing. That's a lot of money also, though, that's being put into it to not have it done on time. Yeah. So obviously not an ideal situation if you have to start the first month on the road, especially for a brand new club that's just kind of come together.
Right.
But, that maybe potentially works to their favor. It's, you gotta presumably a brand new group of players. That's a lot of bonding time on the road. Who knows? Maybe that gets you on the right foot. Then you find your home in your brand new arena, and maybe that sets you on your way to what we saw last year with the Vegas Golden Knights inaugural year going to the Stanley Cup final. Obviously hard to make that prediction. At this point, we don't even know who would be on their roster. But with the precedent that the NHL set with the last expansion draft with the Vegas Golden Knights, you would have to think they are going to do everything they can to make sure that Seattle is just as competitive right out of the gate.
And definitely a deserving city. It's hard to think that they don't have an NBA or an NHL franchise. Two successful teams, popular teams in the Seahawks in the NFL, Mariners in the MLB. A team that I think clearly, based on season ticket sales alone, there's an appetite there. So good to see another major North American sport returning to that city.
So the team is expecting to name the club in spring 2019. They're not jumping the gun. I'm sure they've got plans underway. Probably talking to a few graphic designers and throwing some names around. Don't really know what they've got planned, but they expect to have the name in place by this upcoming spring. So let's speculate. Mike, what do you think? What do you got for a name?
One of the things I just love about sports is you can bet on just about anything. Seattle Times, I'm looking at in front of me here, Sporting News. What will the name of Seattle's proposed NHL team? And you can literally see odds. One I came up with completely on my own. Given the geographical proximity to Vancouver, who actually that could be a fun little rivalry.
Oh, I'm sure the Canucks are thrilled.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of, even for instance, when the Mariners play, hordes of Blue Jays fans cross the border to watch their team play when they play the Mariners. So they're close to one another. I think they could form a fun little rivalry. They've got Finn the Whale as their mascot, a whale in their logo. I thought the Killer Whales.
just pull the rug right out from under the Canucks.
I can hear an announcer yelling it now. Killer Whales. I don't know. That popped out.
I like it.
There are some fun ones though.
You got what else you got?
Emeralds. We heard TJ Oshie throwing around the totems. I'm seeing that on a list of proposed NHL teams. I really like this one, Kraken.
The Kraken.
I find it funny.
That's good.
It's higher. It's one of the more favored potential names. Ooh. Sea Lions would be kind of funny. Eagles, one of the favorite ones right now.
The Eagles. Yeah, that's boring.
The whales are on there, but they're not killer whales.
Not killer. No. I like how you took it a step further.
Killer whale.
Yeah. Well, that would also be like such a solid diss to the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah. You just start a rivalry before you even play a game with one another.
Don't even drop the puck.
You had the crest. We just took the name. Now what's up? All right. So I got a couple written down here. I didn't go on any betting odds, anything like that. Just going from the heart. I got the Seattle Coasters.
Yes.
They're on the coast, and coasters are nice to keep marks from your coffee table when you are enjoying a beverage. Very useful and a very practical name. I've got the Seattle Fishermen.
Very good. Okay.
Nothing backing that one up. Here's my favorite, though. I think they should just steal the Whalers name from the ill-fated Hartford franchise.
Yes.
I don't know what they'd have to do that, but it's arguably one of the best crests in NHL history. It's a great name.
Yes,
It's not in use. Just take it.
Just take it.
Take the Whalers. Anyway, I'm sure we'll come up with more ideas as we go along. I love the Kraken, though.
The Kraken, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I forgot they had an MLS team, the Sounders.
The Sound.
I don't know what that means.
What? No, that's no good at all.
The Kraken.
Yeah, the Kraken leads the way.
I know. I like
for
that.
sure. All right, that'll do it for Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you by Sport North for another Monday night. We will talk to you again next Monday.